Every summerers.
Top 100.
Every summerers.
Top 100. He's got a voice that's really the bomb. He'll make a choice that'll aggravate Tom. I hate to spoil it, but when all's said and done, Merchant of Venus gonna be number one.
Every summerers.
Top 100. Yeah.
It's the top 10! Let's get started, shall we?
Number 10, Agricola.
Agricola. What is it about all my top games? They're all heavy. This is Uwe Rosenberg's Agricola. You are building a farm and you are building more buildings, adding on to your house, reinforcing your house, making it better, collecting resources, raising animals, farming various vegetables, all in the quest of victory points. It is a worker placement game. You start out with just you and your wife, or you and your husband, and you are placing these two farmers on various action spaces, and then you can increase your family, grow your house, and eventually end up with a lot of people in your family doing what you need to do. I find this game tense. I find it very interesting to try and grab the right action at the right time before your opponents do, to do what your opponents aren't doing. There's a whole huge deck of cards in here for the developments, and there are jobs in here. And depending on what you get in your hand at the beginning of your game, that sort of determines what sort of strategy you're going to go with. And that variability, even just with what's in the base box, makes this infinitely replayable. And then you can get a bunch of extra decks, and I'm not a huge fan of the boxed expansions for this. Farmers of the Moor is one of them. But the base game is just, there's so much in here. It is a great game. My number 10. Agricola.
Number 9, Eclipse.
Yep, another heavy box. Eclipse is my number 9. It's a game about space exploration and combat. It's often referred to as a 4X game, which is exploration, exploitation, expansion, and extermination. You can play one of 6 different races. Actually, it's more than that if you play with the humans. Each color has a 2-sided board. You can play human, or you can play one of the alien races that have slightly more expanded abilities. You've got this huge player mat, and it is, at its core, this is actually a resource management game, which is probably why it appeals to me so much. And you need to maintain your civilization. If you expand too far, you will have fewer action discs to do what you need to do. You can upgrade your ships. You can change the lasers or the drives or the hull on these various ships. Build more, fly them around. You can get technology that increases your ability to do various things. You can be totally peaceful and avoid all of the other civilizations. You can make pacts with the other civilizations that you run into, and just go straight for victory points in exploration. Or you can beef up your ships and just blow everything up. It is a really cool game. I've been playing this on iOS as well, which is a nice implementation. Not perfect, but very good. And this is making my arm hurt. Eclipse is a great game.
Number 8, Dominion.
8, I don't have much of a visual aid for, because all of my Dominion is in this and one other box just like it. At some point you realize that you can't fit all of the cards in the actual boxes unless you really do some building on the inside, which is possible. But I have everything, let's try and get nice and close here. I've got everything organized in one of these boxes, and I've got labels for everything, and that's working for me. I have the entire set at this point. Have not played as much of it, haven't played every single set, but I still adore the gameplay of Dominion. It's so simple as far as starting. Everyone starts with the same deck, and you are building your deck. You have to figure out the puzzle of the cards that you're presented with at the beginning of the game, and how am I going to make this set of 10 cards work for me this time? And some people find that a little limiting or not as interesting as an entire game, but I find that, once again, it's the distilled version that I appreciate the most, and it's the granddaddy of the deck builders. I really enjoy Dominion. I don't get to play it nearly as often as I would like to. And again, this is another one that I think is going to work well with my kids as they get older. Again, that easy entry point that we'll be able to start and learn it together and explore it together. Dominion, great game.
Number 7, Mice and Mystics.
Number 7 is Mice and Mystics, and this game has taken us by storm. Not just me, but the entire family, at least the game players here. It is an adventure game. You're playing a mouse crew that used to be human, but now they're mice, and they are trying to save the kingdom from evil forces. And here's the guy who has been playing it just as much, if not more, than I have. So Mice and Mystics is probably your favorite game, right?
Yeah.
So who's your favorite character to play?
Like, I like Tilda and Filch.
Okay.
I like the healers because they're like a lot better because they get to heal other mouses because they're kind of like useful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know how otherwise I would use them, but
And what's the what minion do you think is the nastiest?
I think that in the old one or the new one.
Any of them. We're talking about the expansion as well.
Glorm I think is the nastiest.
Oh, Glorm's pretty bad. We still don't know what Glorm is going to do. Mice and Mystics is a story-based game, so the base box comes with 11 chapters or scenarios that you can work your way through, and the first expansion, The Heart of Glorm, has 6 chapters, and we are working our way through that right now. I find it to be a terrific family experience. You and I have been playing as much as we can, as much as our schedule allows, and then even when we're done, you like to keep the pieces out and keep playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a big thumbs up from both of us. My number 7, Mice and Mystics.
Number 6, Antique.
My number 6 is another Mac Gertz Rondel game, and that is Antique. This also has a bunch of pieces, and you've got combat as you're marching your way around the board, but combat isn't as much of an emphasis here as it is in Imperial. In fact, there's other ways to earn points. This is a race to earn a certain number of victory points, and you can do that in various ways. You can do that on a technology track. Simply being the first one to research a technology is going to get you one of those victory points. You can do it through combat, you can do it through expanding your zones, and trying to do what the other players aren't to make your job just a little bit easier is part of the key of this game. You will have the rondel mechanism. You are collecting resources off of your spaces on the board and then using them on the rondel to build and expand. And what I find interesting about this rondel mechanism is you've got a particular space where you earn a particular commodity, but you can't use that commodity until you work your way halfway around the rondel again. It's sort of spread out that way. And I like that. How fast do I move around this action track? When do I make a push? When do I pay to move a little bit farther? Antique is a really, really cool game, and it's obviously one of my favorites.
Number 5, Through the Ages.
Talking about intense world-conquering games through the ages. A lot of Chvattel's game of a civilization building. This one is a masterpiece. It's all card-driven. There is no map as you associate with the other players. You're simply playing cards, working your way through the ages as your technology gets better and better. This is a heavy economic game. You have to keep your economy moving. If you ignore certain aspects of your civilization, it will be to your peril. But there's so much variation in the way the cards come up, what personalities you may decide to pick up, what leader you've got working for you, what technology you focus on, what you just happen to be able to pick up in the card draft. I don't get to play this as often in person. However, there are so many really nice online implementations, which is good because it means I can think through my turn. This can be a little long, but if you're with experienced players that know what they're doing, they can work their way through pretty quickly. I've heard people play 3-player games in 90 minutes, 2 hours. It's possible. Through the Ages there is a lot of game in this not terribly large box. Well worth it. Through the Ages.
And number 4, Alien Frontiers.
This is another love at first sight game. In Alien Frontiers, you are rolling dice, and you are assigning those dice as ships. Those are your ships that you roll. Assigning your dice to various spots on the action board, and you're collecting resources, you're trying to build colonies onto the board, and you're trying to get all of your colonies onto the board in order to win the game. That's when the game ends, and there's some points so whoever builds the final colony may not win, but usually they're going to win. When you place these colonies onto the board, that also gives you additional abilities that are associated with the action spaces around the board, and whoever has the majority in certain sections gets a bonus for using the various territories on the board. Alien Frontiers is one of the first Kickstarter successes, and it sort of proved that a small company with a really good game can make it outside of the traditional publishing model, and it started Clever Mojo Games. It is graphically interesting. I love the mechanisms. The gameplay just clicks for me. I'm one of the few that appreciate the base game more than the expansion. Expansion's good, but I kind of like the simplicity and the streamlined nature of the original box. It's great. I've played this with tons of different groups of people, and I'm always engaged with the game. And it's one that I adore. So Alien Frontiers, number 4. If you haven't played this, you need to.
Number 3, Pandemic.
My number 3 is my wife's number 1, and that is Pandemic. Pandemic is a game by Matt Leacock. You are trying to save the world from various diseases. Pandemic did not start the co-op movement. There were certainly cooperative games before Pandemic, but this one, I think, this one gets the credit for really popularizing the movement. I just recently got in the lab the new expansion for the game, and I enjoy it, but it does make it a little bit more complicated. The base game and its first expansion keep a lot of simplicity into the game. You just have to collect a certain number of cards in order to cure a particular colored disease. 5 blue cards will cure the blue disease. Pretty simple. And you're all working together to make that happen. Trading cards, building research stations, curing the diseases that are on the board. In the lab makes that curing process a little more difficult, and I have yet to try it with my wife. But it is a terrific, again, we're talking about that distilled cooperative mechanism. Its simplicity makes it a game that I can play with just about any group. And so I've played this with the family, I've played it with diehard gamers, and everybody enjoys themselves. And I'm never quite sure that we're going to survive. I feel like I'm really good at this game, but it's still a challenge to work your way through it. I adore Pandemic. My number 2.
And number 2, Power Grid.
If you've done any listening to the Dice Tower in the past, you can probably guess the last 2. Number 2 is Power Grid, the Freedom and Freeze classic about building power plants and expanding your power network. I adore the mechanisms in this game. The resource track. You've got all these little resource tokens, and they're on a track that represents how much each of those cost. It serves several different functions. It says how much they are, but then when you remove the token, well, then the price increases. And then those refill at a certain rate as the course of the game goes, and what map you're playing, they'll come back in a certain order, in certain quantities, and that really changes the dynamic of the economy. And you've got different power plants that work on different fuel. So do you go for trash because nobody's in there? But trash may be really expensive right now. Coal, on the other hand, is really cheap, but if everybody goes for coal plants, well, that's really going to change the price of coal down the line. It's got an auction mechanism where you're trying to purchase these plants. There's tons of expansion maps. In fact, there is a secondary box behind me to fit all of the expansion maps. Power Grid is a great game. I adore it, obviously. It is my number 2 because I feel like my number 1 is obviously my favorite, but this one I think is a tighter game than that. This one has this one's mechanically sound, and I truly appreciate the way that Power Grid works. My number 2.
And finally, number 1, Merchant of Venus Classic.
Yeah, I mean, the theme song says it all. Merchant of Venus. Space-based pick-up and deliver game. It's from the 80s. It's a game by Richard Hamblin. This is the original Avalon Hill edition. There was a print-and-play version during the period when the game was unavailable, and now there's a Fantasy Flight reprint that includes the classic game. Everybody starts out at the galactic base, they spread out, and you're trying to buy and sell goods, but you don't know where anybody is at the beginning of the game. So you were trying to explore. To begin with, that's Act 1. Explore the galaxy, try and find out where you need to go to make your trade routes work. Act 2, start building ports to make it easier to move around. Upgrade your ship so you can make those deliveries more easily. Find out where those trading routes are. And in Act 3, race to the finish line, because you're playing to a certain amount of money. The first player to get to that goal wins the game. And you need to get there more efficiently, take advantage of the economy, the demands that show up through the course of the game, and do it more efficiently than your opponents, and have a little bit of luck on your side, because there's a lot of dice rolling. It is a roll and move game. Surprise. But it all works. And maybe there are some flaws in this box, but I don't see them. It is an amazing game, and one that just hits on all cylinders for me. It's hard to even explain what makes it all work. But if you haven't played Merchant of Venus, and you've stayed away because it's an older title, because it's a roll and move game, you should give it a try. Watch my review, either of them, to decide if it's a game for you. It's definitely a game for me. And every other pick up and deliver game, every other space game from now until I leave is going to be measured by this box. It's my number 1, Merchant of Venus. Okay, we've made it. Thank you for watching all of the videos. The boys really had fun helping me out with it. Hopefully, I'll be back doing some more video stuff in the near future. You had fun?
Yeah.
You had fun?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for watching The Dice Tower. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for watching one of the Dice Tower's top 100 games list. Tune back next time for 10 more of Eric's games. Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock.
Top 100.